involved in high-level initiations, but it was considered really important work. And these were energy to feed the people, power to generate an energy field on the whole planet. And we invest a whole lot of energy now in hydroelectric plants, and because we know there's going to be a big return. And so I think there was a system that did support this sort of thing. And it's fantastic. And, we're speculating, of course. We can't say for sure, but we have to have all our pixels in order and look at the instruments that we have and the evidence that we have. Like if you think about the amount of crystal that I described before, and it's everywhere, think about we've got crystals in our watches, crystal oscillators makes a CD-ROM work, a radio work. Everything is run by crystals and teeny tiny little bits. So if you magnify this by hundreds of square feet, 8-10 inches deep, and it's here, here, and here, and here, vibrating off the pyramid, off the sound, off the, it starts to make a little bit of sense. Like, we don't have to understand how a radio works to turn it on and dial the station and listen to it. But, it's a fact that pretty much everything we have that's electronic, Ethernet cables, everything's run with crystals.
How did we lose the technology, though, passed down? I mean, there's this massive gap, Carmen, where we don't know anything. Yep. Where did it go? What happened to it? Okay.
Well, this is a great question, and you've interviewed Walter Crittenden, and he talks about us being in a binary star system, possibly with Sirius. Now, again, he is speculating and wondering and all of that, and he's saying that the binary system, and again, we need diagrams for this, but he's shown that in his great year. And if you can imagine an orbit for the Earth and an orbit for Sirius, and them kind of being oblong, and when we're the farthest away, we're going slow, and then when we come back together and go close, then it speeds up. I'm drawing with my hands, but you can't see me.
See, what you don't know is, yes, I can.
Oh, good.
We have technology too.
We have telepathy. So when we're in the quickening, when we're closer, it's almost like a magnet being strong when it's closer. Then we are in a golden age. And when we're at the farthest outreaches of this orbital cycle, then we're weak. So the resonance patterns, the magnetism is weak. And so we end up weak. We're weak-brained, we're feeble. And so in the golden age, we have more of a propensity to be able to handle this and be on, okay? Now what's happening is 2012 is the demarcation point where we're just about to turn and go back into the light and climb our way through. But one of the metaphors that I really like is that as we're approaching winter solstice, and it's getting darker and darker, it may not be as bad in California, but certainly up in Canada, in Calgary, where I've been living, and it gets darker and darker and darker. It's just, it's almost like we're being squeezed and contracted. Yeah. And then we hit solstice, and we get 5 more minutes of light a day, and another 5, and another 5, and we start to feel better. And so this is the point that is upon us. 2012 isn't about doomsday. It's about turning a corner, and it's about the end of this horrible, dark bloodbath coming to an end. Now, that doesn't mean that the collective unconscious is going to just let go and go, yippee, we're heading toward the golden age. There's still a lot of patterns that are in place that are going to hold us there. But that's why we can't remember, because it's just like, the light still works, but when it's unplugged, if you don't know that you got to stick those prongs in the wall, or if the electricity grid goes down, so what if you plug it in, it doesn't work? Now, here's what I think. We had 2 big floods, at 11,500 BC or somewhere in there. Plato talks about it, or 11,500 years ago. I never remember that one. But anyway, think about it.
And then the big one from Noah.
If we're living in a house where it's cold out and the grid goes down, how long are we going to last in the house?
Not long.
I have to leave, go find a cave, light a fire, find another way to live. Now, we don't have our stuff anymore. That doesn't mean we didn't have a computer yesterday and we don't know how to use it. It means we lost our stuff and the grid went down, right? So what would we do if we were really into astronomical configurations and understanding how the flooding would happen, and the flooding of the Nile would happen with the rising of Sirius, and the planet goes down below the horizon and then comes back up, and all of the mythology that we've talked or know about from the pyramid texts is all speaking about these cycles. So if it was you and me and a bunch of our friends, and we found each other at the mouth of the cave, wouldn't we start putting stones up, stone circles, and starting over again, marking that?
Sure.
Right. So what's
Sure.
Naphtha Playa, and when is it dated to? It's dated to after the flood. And there's another circle like 500 kilometers away, and they're dotted all over the place. And so we'd start over with what we had. And so I think what happened is the grid went down.
The grid went down. That's not bad. Or, as I think, what if they just merely packed up and left?
Well, if there was an opportunity to evacuate and pack up and leave, and the ship came along, I'd probably want to get on, would you?
I'd get on as long as my loved ones were with me.
Well, exactly. And if they didn't want to go, we'd make camp and start over.
We'd stay. Absolutely.
And
there's just, Carmen, you've done a remarkable job, by the way, and I've interviewed a lot of people, as you just said. And I think you're as close than anybody I've talked to about what possibly might have happened, how they built these. When I look at what Edward Leeds Scullin, are you familiar with him, Coral Castle? Okay.
Sure.
He died in 1951, always said he knew the secrets of the pyramids, and he was obsessed with magnetism. I think it's very close to what you've said. I think he knew about this, and he did the same thing.
And the operative word is secret.
Yes.
Right?
He kept it a secret.
We're not supposed to tell everybody, and this wasn't for everybody because it could have been misused. And I think somewhere along the line there was a little bit of rough and tumble, and it did get misused. And the power was there. And you'll see, if you look at the footage on the Pyramid Code, these cracks. How can you make a crack in a solid piece of rock that big? And there's one in the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, and the side of the sarcophagus got blown out in the King's Chamber, and they've stuck a fan inside the crack on the wall. And then in Dashur, there's weird chemical marks in there. So let's imagine that these were really big operating machines that used a completely different kind of technology, implosion energy, not explosion energy, and all of that, and they malfunctioned. It would crack the thing apart. But the pyramids are un-Islamic, and they wanted to take them down. And we don't have the technology to take them down. And the other thing is, when they finally got into the pyramid, it was forced entry. Charles Piazzi Smith used explosives to get in. And they didn't find mummies in there. They found white powder. They found chemical stuff. So it was like a closed chemical machine that just kept on perpetuating itself, right? Like you don't go open up your car battery and start messing with it. It just works. And then when you need a new one, you put a new one in.
You put a new one in. That's
right? You don't open it up and say, well, what's in here?
Well, then, at least in the old days, we used to. We don't do that anymore.
Right, but there's closed circuits that you don't interrupt, you replace. Like a light bulb. You don't go in there and open it up and start fiddling with it. It's a closed circuit. And I think that that's what the pyramid was.
Could the power have been abused and maybe it sank Atlantis, for example?
Uh-huh. I think so.
Yeah.
And we knew that was coming too. I mean, like I say we because many people who are incarnated now were incarnated in Egypt and were incarnated in Atlantis. Now, the Council of Nicene in 300 AD or whatever, they decided to outlaw reincarnation. So no one was allowed to talk about it anymore. And then the demonization of the feminine and Mary Magdalene and all of that. Okay, so we're just going to, and then anything that was tarot or numerology or astrology or magic or alchemy or plant magic or any of that. Oh, well, we're going to kill anybody who's into that, right? And then the cellular memory, then people get afraid and then they think it's all weird. Well, I'm here to tell you, weird isn't weird anymore. On some level, we're coming into a more refined energy, and we're in it together to remember. And everybody has brought their puzzle piece. And my quest has been to create a context that the puzzle pieces can fit in so that everybody's contribution starts to add up to something.
That's remarkable. Good work, by the way. Good work. Now, give me the percent. How accurate do you think you are? How right do you think you are?
Okay, now, I got a PhD, and when you say it could be, it may be, from the information we have now, it looks like, because in 20 years, there may be another piece that comes along, and we're missing a big piece, but from what we've got right now, it's at least feeling good. Now, when you combine all the things we've talked about tonight, ghosts and, all kinds of things, disincarnate, altered states of consciousness, all those bits